I think the more we learn about the James Harden situation, the more clarity you get, right? So the truth is James Harden thought that he was going to be on the Brooklyn Nets back in November before the season even started. So that's one piece. And then clearly it was January and James Harden hadn't been moved yet. A couple months passed when he thought he was going to be on the team. No movement. Tilman Fertitta, Salty Frittata as I like to call him, was not interested in doing anything unless it fit him on his timeline and for the assets that he wanted. Okay, so if I was James Harden, I would do everything that I could to pull the levers of power and make them uncomfortable, just like they said they wanted to be. Right? Okay, so he pushes the buttons to get out of town. But it really is a Tilman Fertitta, the owner of the Houston Rockets, problem. He was the reason that this whole thing happened the way that it happened. If Tilman Fertitta would have just kept his mouth shut and stayed in his lane, James Harden would still be a Rocket right now. How do I know this? All right, let's go through the history. I've been wanting to work this in, so let's do it right now.
Let's go.
Tilman Fertitta buys the team in 2017. He keeps hands off for a little while. Daryl Morey doing his damn thing. He's fluid. Daryl Morey doesn't have to really ask anyone to do anything. He's the de facto owner of the team at this point, and he's one of the best at making moves on the fly. All right, then Tilman Fertitta comes in about a year later, a little more, and says, you know what? Handcuffs are off me now. That's a quote. Handcuffs are off me. Now, Daryl, you need to run every single thing by me. Daryl Morey's like, what? What'd you say? All right. So now Morey doesn't have the ease to make moves, to make trades, to make those financial decisions that make or break in the league a second or two. And now you've got a red tape crisis that the Frittata is running. What are you doing, Tilman Fertitta? He fucks up with the flow. And then D'Antoni and Daryl Morey are united. They're like, we don't want Russell Westbrook. There's only one ball. This thing has disaster written all over it. And just like an owner who's a busybody would do, he forces that trade to happen. And he says, you know what? These guys got a little cold feet. I made sure to turn the heat up on them. Now we got Russ in Houston. And it is a fucking nightmare. And then he wouldn't extend D'Antoni. He was like, oh yeah, lame duck D'Antoni, I'm okay. His agent didn't want to get a deal done. He did me a favor. These are all quotes. Look them up. He did me a favor. And then he says, I'm not extending you the very next year after he didn't extend him the last offseason. And D'Antoni says, you know what? I'm out. I'm not going to take a bunch of one-year contracts and have me on a little leash where I do exactly what you want to do because I'm worried about not getting extended.
Right.
So he says, you know what? I'm out. And then Daryl Morey's like, yo, I'm out too. I'm going to take some personal time. And they both bounce. Daryl Morey gets a lucrative contract being the second GM on a contender, and D'Antoni becomes the de facto head coach on a contender. And then James looks around, and it's tumbleweeds and a guy coming off of an ACL injury that he doesn't want to play with, and he's like, holy shit, get me out. So all of this comes down to Tilman. If it wasn't for him doing all his shady things, then maybe we would have a team that was still intact. So, and he's still salty, so that he didn't want to make that trade with Daryl Morey to get Ben Simmons. You could have had Ben Simmons on your squad right now, and instead you have Victor Oladipo on an expiring and some draft picks. Nice job, Tilman Fertitta. You fucking played yourself.